Before there was time, before there was anything, there was nothing. And before there was nothing, there were gods. Great and terrible gods. Beings of pure concept, possessing no true will, body, morality, or intention. They are pure representations of the forces of the universe. Try as we might, we shall never truly understand them or their esoteric ways. But we will certainly try, even unto madness. Hello and welcome back to the Stygian Study, friends. Coming at you live from North Carolina. I'm not in my normal recording studio. And tonight, we are going to be going back to the world of fear and hunger while we wait for Miro to drop the update. I wanted to make a video explaining the cosmology of fear and hunger, its gods, its magic, and its world, laying the groundwork for how I personally view each of these elements, and as such, I'm going to be splitting it up into 3 separate parts, with this video being the first installment, where we will discuss the old gods. Part 2 will be focusing on the ascended gods, and part 3 around the new gods and general humanity. These are all concepts I touched on in earlier videos, and I found them worthy of being their own videos outright, but I figured it would be good to have a precursor before I jump into some topics like Vinushka, logic, and sulfur with their own videos and fleshed out theories. So, as I said, I will be outlining my basic views and information on this subject in these videos, which includes breaking down the gods' magical powers, their followers, and any methods of worship we have seen thus far, not really diving too heavily into theory territory, though I will touch on it a little bit. So before we begin, I believe it is imperative we establish where these gods came from and establish what their nature is like as best we understand. The gods are said to have originated from a place called the Void, a place that the player can only gain access to by sitting on the Golden Throne in Mahab. The Void is the home to the Green Hue, a supernatural force that is alien in its nature, though is the source of creation seemingly. The Void is a timeless, empty place, where strange and ancient creatures known as blights wander in bloodlusted frenzy, where humans go in search of ascension, and where true gods are born. It is a realm of pure concept and thought, and it is the closest thing we have to the heavens in the universe of fear and hunger as we can possibly get. Now, we don't know an absolute ton about the Void, as we've only been there once, but the Void, moreover the Green Hue, allows humans to transcend into their new god forms, and it is what gave birth to the gods in the first place. I outline this as it highlights how alien these gods are and how little we truly understand about them, and that these gods are entire concepts. They are things such as creation, destruction, light, darkness, order, chaos, inexorable forces that we can't really understand with our human minds, though we do our best to try. Of all the gods in fear and hunger, none strike as much fear and awe into the world as the mighty Gro-Goroth. He is the god of human sacrifice, destruction, fear, blood magic, necromancy, and so much more. And with Enki's Skin Bible in Fear and Hunger 2, we can learn more about his nature. Gro-Goroth, the destroyer of men, he who ushers a new dawn with force and violence. Gro-Goroth is the other part of the most primal duality, creation and destruction, where the other doesn't exist without the other. The word destruction is often associated with the evil of the world. This, of course, is foolishness. There is no room for new creation if the slate is not first burnt clean and empty. A man fears destruction. Man gets accustomed to peace and quiet. Man grows fat and afraid of change. Change is inevitable, just as Gro-Goroth. What one needs to understand is that the destruction is of a pure kind. It does not target one man specifically, it just exists. Gro-Goroth is associated with the god of creation, Sylvian, and their child, the god of nature, Vinushka. Gro-Goroth offers mankind the blessing of blood magic, constant sacrifices in his name will maintain the relationship. So his domain is that of pure destruction in all its forms. From the collapse of a star, to murder, to a thunderstorm, Gro-Goroth lives in all these moments. But this major domain he governs comes with several minor domains that he interacts with and thus rules. Fear. Now, fear is a byproduct of his domain. He does not rule that emotion in and of itself, but instead provokes it by the presence of his initial domain, which is destruction. Destruction is the end of a given thing, the unmaking of that which is made. And I can tell you for a fact that in the face of a force such as that, living creatures' natural reaction is to be in fear. Human sacrifice. Now, this has always been a curious domain to me because it is not an actual domain, as to sacrifice something is to just simply destroy something in its essence. So him being the patron of human sacrifice is merely an extension of his true domain. And any act of sacrifice is the destruction of something. It is the forfeiting of it and moving it on for change. Blood magic and necromancy. So this one's always confused me. Blood magic is often linked with destruction and war magic in the real world, but it has carried more meanings than just that. Blood itself is tied to life, and thus can be used for blessings as it can be used for hexes. And blood sacrifices have historically been used in this context, tracing back to empires like the Aztecs, who used blood sacrifices for good harvest and divination, or in modern Satanism, where blood is offered to demons as a show of good faith, not only for the profanity of the offering, but it is a powerful gift since blood carries the spiritual essence of a person within it. In Fear and Hunger, blood magic manifests in the form of necromancy and blood golems. What confuses me is that necromancy is the art of manipulating death by bringing things back from the dead and creating entirely new lives, which seems to counter what destruction bears in mind. And from blood and flower magic, we can also see that necromancy involves forcefully shoving the soul back into a decaying body. To me, this is odd, as it's seemingly the resurrection of life within the domain of the god of destruction. Perhaps it could be seen as an act of violence, the violation of a soul by forcing it back into a rotting shell, dominating it and essentially enslaving it. Or perhaps necromancy is due to the influence of his antithesis, Sylvian, and learning how to create new life from death. Magic-wise, Gro-Goroth's spells are all offensive. You can conjure pure malice and give it physical form with Black Orb, create firestorms with the flick of a wrist, raise the dead as previously observed, obliterate flesh with hurting, or even call upon magics related to the new god Chambara and pass his torture onto another hapless victim. His ritual circle in Fear and Hunger 2 not only raises affinity to one level, but with further bloodshed and sacrifices, you can increase that affinity further. His sigil, when carved onto one's body, increases their capacity for physical violence and damage. In the game, we also fight several traces of Gro-Goroth. The Beast of Darkness that emerges from the black when we fight Nashra in the Blood Pit is one of them. We cannot physically harm this beast, and as soon as it comes near us, it crushes us with great pressure, although this trace must be exceptionally weak as it is being controlled by a new god Nashra in a much weaker form. We encounter a far more powerful version of Gro-Goroth, the Altar of Darkness, that is covered in human bodies. It strikes every fear type into the player, and we can communicate with it. It can seemingly fire its own molten blood at the player and can doom players with the Whisper of Gro-Goroth that will kill anyone who hears them. This is the only time in the series where we also have direct communication with one of the old gods, and thus we can learn a lot about his perspective and why he views humans as so weak. He also seems to delight in revealing hidden truths to mankind to drive them mad, to expose our weakness and destroy us. He does this not only when we communicate with him at the end of Ending B, but he does this if we fail to control the Necronomicon when we read it. We have met several followers of Gro-Goroth already. The Black Witch, who prowls the dungeon of Fear and Hunger, and Mahab, to inflict pain and torment onto any who encounter him, he seemingly has withered to a mere husk, and has exchanged his soul for greater knowledge of blood magic. But that does not make him any less formidable, even if he can be killed with little effort. He has no fear of death, and states that this is but a step on his path. It should be also noted that when he is killed and you decide to kick his dead body, he has very little bones or flesh on his skin, and if you eat his remains, it will instantly poison you as it tastes rotten. The Black Witch's soul also grants the holder the ability to inflict poison on anything they attack. I find this kind of interesting that in the worship of Gro-Goroth, it also seemingly destroys you from the inside out. Not your soul, but your physical form, highlighting his need for change and the obliteration of weak things. The Wolf Masks are a cult devoted to Gro-Goroth in the depths of the dungeon. They are enraptured in a cannibalistic feast that never seems to end. Followers will be both devourer and devoured alike, and if one chooses to partake in this ritual, they will feel hunger itself slip away from them nearly permanently. But if indulged into far too much, the taste of human flesh becomes addictive, and one can easily lose their mind in partaking in it. Then we have the Yellow Mages, who are technically followers of Gro-Goroth, but they're students of the new god Nashra. And in that mindset, they have devoted themselves to the concept of chaos. Instead of following the old gods in a religious way, they seek to use the old gods as forces of nature to pursue their own agendas. They channel some of the greatest powers that Gro-Goroth has to offer, and have created their own methods to increase the power of the god further with La Danse Macabre. Known methods of worship surrounding Gro-Goroth revolve around the act of bloodletting, either by wholesale sacrificing another living being, and that does not have to be a consensual sacrifice, murder just totally suffices, or by ritualistic bloodletting as seen by Samurai in Fear and Hunger 2 and by the blood sacrifice skill in Fear and Hunger 1. Gro-Goroth rewards those who destroy with little regard as to the reason why. Pure destruction is his way. Not as a primal hunger, just simply as it is. Gro-Goroth has also been known to camouflage himself among mankind. And as such, his statue in Mahab is actually quite noble in appearance, which is not an uncommon event as destructive deities in the past of human history have also been depicted as noble despite their terrifying visage and nature, such as Sekhmet in the Kemetic tradition, or Ma Kali in Hinduism. Destruction as a force of nature is noble. Despite humanity's propensity to shake in fear of its approach, it is the force that clears trees, burns away rotting things, and creates room for the new. Bloodletting itself is also a noble act. It's all in the intention of it. A god of destruction and decimation he is, but he stands as a deity of grave importance to the world of Fear and Hunger. And despite traces of Gro-Goroth stating us that the old gods have all left, I personally have a sneaking suspicion that he still may walk among humanity, observing the destruction we inflict upon ourselves. As there exists pure, unfiltered destruction, so too must there exist unbridled creation. Sylvian is that force. She is the deity that created all of humanity, and that was confirmed as such by the Skin Bible found in Fear and Hunger 2. She is all that makes the universe breathe. In the fangs of a wolf, in the rays of light that dance across the meadow, and in the brutal competition of survival, Sylvian exists in all these moments. Her domain is creation, and with that comes a few other identifiable subdomains. Love, similar to Gro-Goroth, she does not control the entire emotion of love. It is a byproduct of creation itself. Any artist could tell you that there is a measure of love that overcomes one as they create something. Parents instinctively love their children to some degree. But it is not the love of romance. It is a deep, instinctual, and primal feeling that is as close to Sylvian's love as we could come to understand. Sylvian's definition of love is alien to us. It is an overwhelming amount of affection that is obsessive. It is why she has also come to hate humanity, as they could never return this level of affection back to her, and she has attempted to mind control humanity to make her love her in this way. But we are humans and we simply can't. Life. This is once again a byproduct of her primary domain. It cascades down creation as it begets life. All living creatures on the earth stem from Sylvian's influence, and she can create life on a whim, and she demonstrates such during her boss fight when she makes clones of the party. Likewise, we also gain spells in her worship that allow us to cultivate life. Something of note within this domain is that Sylvian can also seemingly control the minds of living creatures as well. She did so in the past with many of her servants as they fall into trances, lost in the delights of flesh. She can also harness the green hue to obliterate minds of your party in her boss fight. Perhaps it is that, as the force of creation in the universe, she can conduct the green hue more so than any other old god. It is the green hue that made her and all the other gods, of course, so it would stand to reason that the green hue that matches the color of her and her traces is a tool that she can conduct with greater accuracy than other old gods. As a creator, all of her powers revolve around the mending that which lives, along with the creation of new life. Healing whispers, loving whispers, both mend the physical wounds of the user and others. She also raises the magical defense of those who are exceptionally devoted, and she has the ability to create flowers from the corpses of defeated enemies that can raise attributes once consumed. Her greatest blessing can be bestowed upon the player in the form of marriage, the union of flesh that occurs when her ritual is performed. And given that she's the goddess of love and life, I feel the subtext makes it very clear what kind of ritual I'm talking about. Although we have only ever seen this occur in the Dungeons of Fear and Hunger when we are closer to the realm of the gods than ever before. A marriage can occur when two people of equal affection take part in the ritual and their flesh and minds blend together in a perfect union, creating an entirely new entity. Marriage can be done multiple times, as seen with the human Hydra. We also know that marriage is not just relegated to human either, as we see from, unfortunately, the Moonless Guards in Fear and Hunger 1, and seemingly that of the Centaur in Fear and Hunger 2. Ugh. When it comes to followers, we unfortunately have not ran into too many of our followers in the games, but we have ran into just enough of them to make it worth talking about. The Bunny Masks. Much like the Wolf Masks of Gro-Goroth, the Bunny Masks are a cult devoted to Sylvian. They spend their days partaking in the flesh just as the Wolf Masks do, but as to where the masses for the Wolf Masks are devoted to cannibalism and violence, the Bunny Masks engage in love in the most physical way possible. They exist in a near trance-like state and waste their days away in union with one another. And honestly, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Sylvian in ancient eras of humanity once took a hands-on approach to her creation and entranced all humanity in fleshly pleasures. Days were lost in a sea of naked bodies and delights. Also of note, Dan's parents in Fear and Hunger 2 were also Bunny Mask cultists, as we learned from his intro, and they even attempted to indoctrinate him at a very young age, showing that the acts themselves that we would consider profane are not as such in the eyes of those who worship Sylvian. Likewise, the players can lose their minds if they partake in the Bunny Mask activities too many times. And this is actually how Dan became an orphan, as they were lost in a trance as well. It's not all bad. This form of worship actually does end up restoring the bodies and minds of those who partake. So it's not all negative. The Sylvian Trooper of Fear and Hunger 2 is a follower of Sylvian. While we don't know much about her or them, she seems to be a marriage as well. While seemingly slender, she is actually raw muscle and covered in latex. She also wears a bunny mask, which could also point to her being a bunny mask cultist on top of just being a marriage. She also seems to maintain control of the platoon creature, which seems to be a marriage of many different bodies, and without her commanding it, the platoon quickly becomes lost and confused.
On the note of known methods of worship that Sylvian has, she mainly seems to appreciate acts of physical love, as what we can see in the game. When we perform a marriage, we don't exactly gain affinity with her, unfortunately, but in Fear and Hunger 2, if you have Samari's skill, if you know, you know, self-love also counts as a form of devotion to Sylvian. Anything that creates life or acts within the boundaries of love is a form of worship of Sylvian, but we don't know much outside of that, unfortunately.
Sylvian is perhaps the most alien god of all. And in the human perspective, a god of creation, love, and life would seemingly be a god one would want to worship with all their heart. But in truth, there is no god that hates us quite like Sylvian, and there is no force quite as horrifying and grotesque as creation. When the dance of destruction and creation whirls for eons upon eons, something new emerges from it. And from that union of primordial elements you get Vinushka, the actual most mysterious deity in Fear and Hunger. As they have died, at least on Earth, and we have a very limited amount of interactions with them, their followers, and their influence. Also, yes, I'm using they, them pronouns for Vinushka, as their gender is never specified, so for the sake of accuracy, I'm just going to be speaking about them this way. According to their Skin Bible in Fear and Hunger 2, we can come to understand that Vinushka is the god of nature. They are the raging storm, the gentle breeze, the scorched earth, and the fertile plains. Vinushka is a child of Gro-Goroth and Sylvian, and to me personally, I think that their conception was a natural thing, born from the intermingling of energies from both their parents at the very dawn of time, not a conscious creation. They were not created the way a mortal child is. They are a complete union of energies, inextricable from the universe, born just as naturally as their nature. And perhaps Vinushka is the literal marriage of Gro-Goroth and Sylvian. We already know that Sylvian views marriage and true love as a blending of beings. And given that you need dual affinity to gain certain Vinushka spells, maybe Vinushka is literally the blending of Gro-Goroth and Sylvian as one entity. We also know from the Skin Bible that long ago, humanity and Vinushka, who at the time was called Ninushka, lived in symbiosis. But as humanity's ambition grew, so too did the disdain for nature. Ninushka returned this disdain in kind. The resulting war ended in Ninushka's death, who from then on came to be known as Vinushka, meaning guilt. Enki highlights that Vinushka's death may have been one of the greatest follies mankind has ever committed, and with their death, so too does nature die, and so too does the support it grants humanity. Also, I know I said that I wasn't going to dive too deep into theories, but I personally think Vinushka's death was what set the other old gods off to truly abandon humanity. And if we go off this idea that Vinushka is also a marriage of Gro-Goroth and Sylvian, then perhaps Vinushka's death was not only seen as an affront to just murdering a child, but an assault on the very fabric of reality. Vinushka emphasizes balance, having a wide range of spells that flicker between offensive and utility. They can allow devoted followers to heal themselves simply by being outdoors, showing Sylvian's influence. And when their sigils are drawn upon a ritual circle, it will instantly grow a tree, and if their sigil is engraved upon the flesh of oneself, their magical attack increases. This highlights their alternate half, which is pure destruction, either through violence through roots that stab opponents or lighting wildfires. Vinushka can give life and take it away just as easily as nature itself does. Bit of a big question mark here, unfortunately, as Vinushka is dead, and so too are their cults. We, however, have a few clues. Iki Torso are colossal creatures that dwell within the earth that rise to defend nature wherever and whenever it is threatened. When we speak to this creature in Fear and Hunger 2, the beast elucidates us to a major potential plot point of the future, which is Vinushka's return, in some way, shape, or form. And the Iki Torso are waiting for that day, presumably to judge all of humanity. Which does make sense. Vinushka is nature, and nature exists all across the universe. How could humanity snuff out such a force completely? A force that embodies both the blossoming flowers and rotting bodies. And if that is so, then let us hope humanity is ready for that day. Beyond these beasts, we have the owl cultists, who we also don't know much about, as they don't speak to us. But what we can tell is that they channel spirits from another realm entirely that we have never seen, and is made of spirits and contains ancient beasts. They also seem to be mutated humans, as they have mostly humanoid physiology, if you ask Dan to analyze their bodies, but they have extremely elongated necks and odd proportions, like that of an owl. While there are many questions left pertaining to the enigma of Vinushka, we are certain to gain more knowledge on them in the next update, and I do hope so, as I believe Vinushka is going to be an extremely important figure in the future of this series. I already have a 30-minute breakdown of Rher on this channel, but I will cover him again, but in far less depth, with less theorizing. If you want the full breakdown, you can find it here. Rher, aka the Moon God, is renowned for his use of trickery and serving as the overseer of the Festival of Termina. He is also a god that is known for meddling in human affairs through his machinations, such as the aforementioned Festival of Termina, and through his various servants. His nature is secretive, and even the new gods of Mahab do not know all there is to know about him. All that we do know is that he will do anything to sabotage humanity. By canon standards, Rher has no defined domain, and that is a great part of his mystery. He revolves around secrecy, and there have been many theories put forward as to what his true nature is. I personally believe he is the god of cosmic orders for several factors that I unfortunately do not have the time to delve into here. What we do know for certain is that Rher has some control over the realm of the mind, as well as being able to control dreams. Rher grants his followers a variety of abilities. They mainly revolve around utility and the increasing of the mind's capacity. His sigil increases one's mind, and highly devoted followers gain access to a similar stat increase. He allows his followers to peer into the minds of others, call down the moon's blinding rays, or see where other contestants are in the Termina festival whenever they want. However, his most beguiling and interesting spell is that of the Golden Gates, which grants his followers the ability to walk freely between Rher's realm and the material realm, traversing faster through this dream-like place, which houses some of his most devoted followers, like Pocket Cat. Rher also inflicts humans with moon scorching, or the moonlight cancer, which is an effect that only occurs when one is under Rher's gaze for far too long. The process metamorphosizes the human body into something unshapely and grotesque, and usually reflects some deep-seated fear and insecurities of the afflicted human. Rher rewards the clever. His spells are not overt in their usefulness, and only the intelligent can find the true utility and value of his spells, for any who follow him. We have met many followers of Rher. Pocket the child-devouring monster from folklore, is seemingly Rher's chief follower. We have encountered him in multiple games, and he will attempt to bargain with the player, offering incredibly powerful items in exchange for a blood price, with that said, blood usually being related to the overarching goal of Rher for sabotaging humanity, such as kidnapping the little girl in Fear and Hunger 1, or by us killing other contestants in Fear and Hunger 2, the Lady of the Moon. We don't know much about her, but what we do know is that she emerges from the green hue in Mahab to bargain for the little girl, and if accepted, she will willingly heal the wounds and mind of the players, including lost limbs. Then she will be on her way. She won't engage in combat with us, however. Okay, so he's technically not a full-blown follower of Rher, at least not anymore. He does follow Rher to some degree, as shown by his attire and the spells he utilizes against us in his fight, but he is a liar and exceptionally clever. He even manipulates the Festival of Termina to serve his true master, the Sulphur God. But that is a story for another day. And I would like to mention this, that many of his followers are created, and they are not human. It could be Rher does not want human followers at all. We don't even know how he's worshipped. And I also would like to note that Rher's followers are all bound by some form of orderly rule set that they cannot break, even against their own will. But just as his nature, Rher is vexingly secretive. Now, I can and will write an entire video on the anomaly that is the God of the Depths. He is my personal favorite, and we have quite a bit of information of him in-game to use for theories, but theories will have to wait for another day. We're here to discuss the basics of what we know about these gods. The God of the Depths is a forgotten deity that is also one of the only gods in Fear and Hunger to have truly died. Its domain is unknown, but it seems to rule over the darkness and all that resides in it. The God of the Depths grants his followers dominion over the darkness. His followers can call upon swarms of locusts to disrupt enemies, parasitic worms to heal from enemy damage, and teaches his followers the common tongue that can be spoken by all who follow him, namely bugs, or can call upon a murder of crows to gouge out the eyes of enemies. He focuses around disruption, crowd control, which are abilities of incredible power in the dungeons of Fear and Hunger, as a dazed enemy is a dead enemy. He also grants his followers utility to survive with ways to communicate with the denizens of the darkness. These are tools of his followers. They allow for survival even in the harshest of times. And this theme even carries over into his second incarnation, but she will have to wait for her time in the spotlight. It is unknown how the God of the Depths appreciates worship. We can pray to him in the past Mahab, but that's it. The only other way to increase affinity with him is either to be Enki and select to max out his affinity at the beginning of the game, or to complete the Cockroach King's questline. Speaking of which, the Cockroach King dwells deep within the thicket, and if you possess the ability to speak to insects, you may interact with him. He is initially heavily suspicious of you and condescending, but if you agree to kneel before him, he will send you on a variety of assassination quests that are meant to help him and bug kind. Assassinations that include the Butterfly and Enki. Once completed, this will allow you to max out your affinity with the God of the Depths. Ragnvaldr reveals to us a myth about the thicket, that this area is actually the body of the Bride of the Depths. Interesting, as this is the first and only time we have seen an old god uplift a human in a way that no other seems to have done, in a romantic union. In their union, she transformed into a gigantic tree that forms the base levels of the dungeon, and may be one of the things that are keeping the God of Depths alive, as her roots spread all throughout the dungeon, amplifying his influence, provides a home to fellow insects, and houses many of his organs. All insects revere the God of the Depths, and will ally with anyone who can speak their tongue. There are insects all across the dungeon, and they will grant you advice, powerful items, or directions throughout the dungeon. And most curiously, they seem to want the God of the Depths to fully die. For what reason is not known. Perhaps the insectoids understand that with his passing, the way shall be open for their old master to be reborn as new divinity. One final group of followers that we know of are the cave dwellers, who were stranded inside the dungeon after an unfortunate cave-in eons ago. They are in extremely close proximity to the God of the Depths and to Mahab, and this seems to have led these humans to metamorphosize into a new type of being entirely, one that is very suspicious of outsiders but are willing to engage in trade as necessary. They built their village around the God of the Depths and keep his cube, an anomalous artifact that can alter time, in a shrine to this day. This is not the end of the gods of Fear and Hunger, but this is the end for what we know about the old gods canonically. Unfortunately, just as they have abandoned humanity, we humans have abandoned our knowledge of them, leaving the way open for a new type of god, one that I think is far more cruel than the rest. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I have new theories for Fear and Hunger cooking up as we speak, as well as lore breakdowns for various other games in the works. I appreciate your time, and I wish you a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're at in the world, and thanks for stopping by the Stygian Study. Toodles!